guys, today we are reviewing biodiversity and sustainability. A lot of biodiversity depends on the biome and some other factors, so let's review those factors. So if you look at our Earth, we have an imaginary line that cuts the Earth in half, and that's called the equator. So the equator goes all the way across. It's a line of latitude, all the way across the middle of the Earth. So as you know from the equator, all of the areas around the equator are warm, and they get a lot of precipitation, a lot of rainfall. So it doesn't matter what continent you're in, if the equator runs through it, it's the tropical areas, right? So it's really warm, a lot of energy from the sun, a lot of precipitation goes there. So warm areas all across the equator. When you go north and south in latitude, your temperatures get significantly colder, and that leads us into the tundras. So that's the white areas. In those areas, they receive less sunlight throughout the year, and they receive less precipitation because the temperatures are just a little bit colder. So we've talked about and reviewed abiotic and biotic factors. Abiotic factors are those factors that aren't living. So sunlight and water, precipitation, are those abiotic factors, and they help the biotic factors to survive. So without those abiotic factors, we can't have biotic factors. So sunlight and precipitation are two of those abiotic factors that drive a biome, which helps produce a healthy ecosystem and biodiversity. So here we have Miss Alleman. No. So here we have two biomes, the tropical rainforest and the tundra. So if you compare these two biomes, we have a lot of precipitation here, not so much precipitation here. So what would be the two differences in these two biomes because of the amount of precipitation? Okay, it would be vegetation, it would be your amount of plant life, right? So the more precipitation you have, the bigger your plants will be. The less precipitation you have, the not so big your plants are going to be. So these guys are pretty short, they're pretty small. A lot of the soil in the tundras is frozen most of the year, so it just doesn't get the nutrients that it needs, those abiotic factors, if you will, to grow bigger plants. So the bigger your plant life, the more biodiversity you have, and the more sustainable your ecosystem would be. So sustainability is a new word, pretty big word. What exactly does that mean?
Let me help with that, Ms. Skinner. So a lot of people just freak out because of the fact that sustainability is a big word. But if you just break it down into sustain and ability, we know what ability is, but I like to kind of break it down into a synonym. It could mean maintain, it could mean reliable, to keep up with. So when we look at all of these different kinds of biomes, the biggest thing that you can kind of take away is if you can take one organism out of that ecosystem, will it still be able to survive? If the food chain ends up crumbling, it's not sustainable. So if we look at the tundra does not have as much vegetation as the tropical rainforest. So if I take away only the grass in the tundra, that's half of my vegetation. Therefore, my animals are going to start to decrease in their numbers because they do not have a food source. Whereas if I took away one plant from the tropical rainforest, it still has a lot of other plants to survive on. And it has a lot more biodiversity. It kind of has more cushion. It's not going to be impacted quite as much. So the more biodiversity, the more sustainability. And the less biodiversity, the less sustainability. And all of that's going to rely on your abiotic factors. That's going to drive the biotic factors. Without any water, you don't have
vegetation.
And without vegetation, you're not going to have
herbivores and your primary consumers.
Yes, and animals.
Yeah, you're not going to have your animals. So if your plant life disappears, there goes your animals, and then your food chain just kind of crumbles after that. So it all starts with vegetation. Vegetation. You probably couldn't hear that.
Vegetation.
Vegetation.
All right, so answer the questions on your student guide and then get ready for the next station.
Good luck.